Hi, my love. Welcome to another episode of Radical Radiance. This is something that absolutely blew my mind when I discovered this. And then now that I reflect on it, it seems so obvious. So glaringly obvious. So the concept is that we don't get exactly what we ask for. So I want you to think just for a moment of if you've ever had a word for the year, right? So we sometimes set New Year's resolutions, and sometimes we also have a theme for the year or a word for the year or something for the year. Often it could be something like growth, transformation, freedom, abundance, like all of these kind of words, right? Lots of different things like this. Maybe generosity, maybe happiness, like any of these qualities. And we have this thing in our lives where we think we can intend to have that thing, right? We can think that we can identify, if we're lucky, if we're self-observant, we can identify qualities in ourself that we wish to transform from the maybe more shadow side of that quality into the more delightful side of that quality. So for example, if I think of myself, I could think of the quality of impatience, which is something I'm working very hard to transform in my own life and paying a lot of attention to. So if I think of the quality of impatience, it's something in my life that I would love to transform into patience. And I would love for an ocean of patience to fall out of the sky and carry me away and transform me completely. But that's not what happens. And this was the groundbreaking thing that happened in my mind. We can wish for patience, right? We can intend and want to learn patience. We can intend and want to learn softness. We can intend and want to learn presence. We can intend and want to experience compassion, generosity, courage, confidence, bravery. All of these beautiful qualities that we can all have more of in our life, right? There's no ceiling for how far you can explore these beautiful qualities, so we can always be expanding on them. And we can desire to have them. We can journal about them, we can do affirmations about them, we can be trying to manifest them in our life. And this is the thing that happens. You won't get patience. I won't get patience. I won't suddenly, by intending to be more patient, miraculously become more patient. What I will get in my life is a lot more opportunities where I would normally be very impatient. And I get then to follow a path. I get to, first of all, if I'm lucky enough, catch the thing before it happens automatically, which is a struggle in and of itself. I get to recognize what's happening here. I get to feel the urge to be impatient in my body. It's a very embodied, very physical thing, a lot of these qualities. And then I get to practice being patient, which I promise you goes against every single instinct in my body. This happens in lots of different ways in my life, right? It could be like if I'm walking in a narrow street and there's like someone walking really slowly in front of me, but I can't pass them. Or I'm at the supermarket and there's someone in front of me at the checkout and they're just taking ages, like very slowly putting their things. And I've got other things to do, I don't necessarily want to spend the whole day in the supermarket. But there's also no need to be so impatient in that moment as well. It's not like I have not got the extra 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is to spare. So what I don't get is to stand in that supermarket queue and somehow just magically be flooded with feelings of patience and feelings of calm and, just presence and just enjoying the moment. No, I wish it were that easy. What I actually get in that moment is to feel this rush of impatience in my body. And that's exactly what it feels like. It's like a building up of I've got things to do. I don't want to be standing here in this queue. I don't want to be waiting here. I could be doing other things, And why are they taking so long? And there's, of course, a whole mental narrative that goes along with these situations as well. Why are they taking so long? Why is it taking them so long to pay? Why are they obviously texting someone else while they're at the supermarket checkout? Just pay attention to what you're doing. why didn't they organize the things in the basket better when they were, like whatever it is, do you know what I mean? It's never like that rational. It's always just a justification of our own irateness in that moment. So what I get to do in these moments is feel all of these things come up. I feel the agitation in my body. I feel this restlessness, like this nervous tension almost. It's like a jittery, annoyed feeling. There's a narrative that's telling the story of why I'm annoyed and why I should be annoyed, you know? It's very validating, this narrative, this voice. And then I get to feel all of those things, and I get to somehow, if I'm lucky, override them enough that I get to practice some patience in that moment. And of course, this is something that we, as with any other skill in our life, we have to practice and practice and practice. And some days it will be much easier than others. Some days we will have, you know, had really good sleep, and we will have just had a nice meal, and it's a nice day and the sun is shining, and we feel impatient, but it's like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. I'm in a good mood today. It's fine. And some days it's not like that, and you feel these, you know that you want to be practicing patience, and you feel these urges of impatience coming up, and you can't stop them sometimes, you know, you can't. Sometimes it's just a thing that it's almost like a monster taking over you, hijacking you, which is just the pattern system in your brain, because that's how you've always been. So it's how you economically will continue to be until we exert enough energy and effort and over a long enough time span to steer the ship in another direction. And so it's so difficult. It's very challenging. And we'd like to think that it would happen overnight, but it's just like I can't sit down at a piano and play Tchaikovsky concerto tomorrow. We can't necessarily just intend to be patient and then exercise perfect patience tomorrow. Something that we have to show up for consistently, and understand that there is a pattern that we're following. We're always following patterns of like economical responses, really, like they're conditioned responses that we have, where it's like, someone is walking in front of me slowly, and it's definitely not the pace that I want to be walking at. So I get impatient, and so I feel these feelings of impatience, and then that triggers a certain thing in my body, and triggers a certain narrative in my mind, and so on and so on and so on. So what we have to do is somehow be able to notice the pattern before we just immediately, it's like a slide, right? At a playground. Sometimes when we don't notice that we're on the top of the slide and something tips us off the edge, and it's like, whee, we just go all the way down to the bottom, and that's it. We followed the pathway. And then maybe that night we're reflecting on the day, and we're like, oh yeah, I really didn't practice patience in that moment. I really want to be like calmer, but I really just completely lost my patience with my kids today. I got so irate in that conversation with my partner for no reason, you know, there's no reason for that. And the more we can, introduce these moments of reflection, the more we will be able to catch them in the moment, or maybe just past the moment. And it's just happened, and we're like, oh, whoops. Next time I will do better. And then maybe next time you do better, right? Next time maybe you catch it as it's happening. And maybe in that moment, you don't have the will or the strength or the fortitude to change that pattern in that moment. But at least you recognized it. And then maybe next time you'll be able to influence in some way how you feel in that moment. You'll be able to have some sort of strategy that you can introduce where it allows like a circuit break of going down that slide. You know, it's like a pause just before you go over the edge. And it's like, okay, when I feel this like surge of impatience in my body, what can I do? And I could take like 5 deep breaths, right? Or I could hum a mantra in my mind, or a verse from my favorite song, or the chorus from a song that I like. Or I could take that time to send a nice message to a friend. Maybe I could send somebody that I love and tell them that something that I like about them, or tell them that I was thinking about them, or something like that. Like use it as a moment, a pattern interrupt, to actually put some more goodness back into the world. And so when we realize this, first of all, it's a very rude discovery, because how convenient would it be to want to be more generous in life without actually having to practice generosity in moments where we really don't want to. And this is the thing, they're the moments where we don't want to that matter the most. They're the highest stakes. And they matter the most because that's where we can introduce the biggest change, because it's the most contentious point. And everything in your mind will be battling against you, right? And it will be throwing every excuse and the kitchen sink at you. And it's like, okay, so you decide that there's a quality that you want to practice, which is compassion. You want to be more compassionate. You want to be like just more considerate and compassionate of your fellow human beings, and understanding as well that like we don't always know what people are going through, right? And sometimes we get very annoyed at people because we take things at face value and we're like, well, that's not a rational way to be behaving in this situation. That's not how I like to be treated and it's not fair. But we don't know what people are going through. So say we want to practice being more compassionate. And again, we don't know what people are going through. And of course, we're going to like have situations where people, even people, especially people that we love, because for some reason we have the least patience with the people that we seem to love the most. And we get in these situations where it's like, that's so annoying that that person did that thing. Like, how could they be so inconsiderate? And this is how the narrative will go. How could they be so inconsiderate? It's completely unfair. You are completely justified in being this annoyed. I know we're trying to be more compassionate, but this just doesn't warrant it. This is an extraordinary behavior. Like, this is unacceptable, completely unacceptable. And we can be more compassionate next time. Actually, maybe tomorrow. We'll just start again tomorrow. Don't worry about it. Like, you deserve to be annoyed. In fact, you should express your annoyance. You know? You're completely valid in being annoyed. And yeah, you could be compassionate, but like, wouldn't that just be letting them off the hook? Then you would just be letting them off the hook. Then you're validating their bad behavior. And so on and so on and so on and so on. Like, we have the most outrageous narratives for these things in our mind. But in these moments, these are the moments where we get to really pay as much attention as possible. And we're like, wow, listen to that story. Listen to all those reasons that I have for just throwing the compassion out the window in this situation. And just falling back into my old pattern, you know, of indignation, validating my own indignation, treating the person how I've always treated them anyway. And this is not to say not to have boundaries, right? And to not enforce boundaries, because that's a whole different thing. But this is in the practice of, we think we can become compassionate, but then somehow in the high stakes moments where we get to practice compassion, we think we can just skip those parts and that we'll still become compassionate people anyway. We think we can still be impatient in the most infuriating scenarios, but that somehow we are still going to become a patient person. We think that we can be so much more flexible, right? We think, okay, I'm going to be less rigid. I'm going to be less uptight. I'm just going to learn to go with the flow. I really want to practice just going with the flow. And then the next time someone brings you the wrong coffee order or something like that, like, of course, it's going to be this thing just instantly rising up in you of like, no, that's not how I like it. Like, this is not how I want things to be. And that's the moment that we get to practice, right? It's exactly the moment that we get to practice. And even in things like, you know, wanting to be more confident, wanting to be braver, do you know what life is going to bring you? Moments that are very uncomfortable, where you get to practice being confident, where you get to practice saying what you actually want, where you get to have an opinion and you get to challenge some people maybe on something. You get to enforce a boundary. You get to say, actually, I would rather not do that thing. I would rather do this thing. Or you get to have situations where you feel unbearably lonely, and the only way out of that is to go and start some conversations with people that you don't know, because you've asked to become more confident. You've asked to become braver. You've asked to learn these things. You've asked to experience different experiences in your life so that you get to actually grow these living qualities within you. They are alive. They're like gardens. We get to nurture them. We get to grow them. We get to really, really give them love and attention. It's like trying to grow a garden of patience. If every single opportunity I have to be patient, I just abandon the garden altogether. And my seeds aren't going to grow if I'm not watering them. The thing here that makes this much easier, I think, as a practice, is just to accept that it's really uncomfortable, especially initially. It's like any new skill that you're learning, right? I can want to learn a Tchaikovsky piano concerto. I guarantee if I go right now and sit down at a computer and try and remember the scales that I learned when I was like 10 years old learning the piano, it's not going to be fun. It's going to feel awful, and I won't be able to remember any of them. I'll be annoyed at myself because I can't remember any of them. I'll feel 1,000 million miles away from ever being able to play any Tchaikovsky. And then we get to show up every day. We get to build something very, very incrementally over time. Slowly, slowly. We get to water the seed, and we get to really trust that the seed is growing even though it hasn't come up above the soil yet. You know? And it takes time to learn these skills, right? To not feel so triggered in a situation where you're instinctively just being impatient, or you're instinctively reacting with anger, or you're instinctively saying something nasty, or you're instinctively just shutting someone down and not giving them time to speak, or whatever these patterns are. You're instinctively just closing in on yourself and withdrawing instead of being more confident. You're instinctively wanting to try new things but then cancelling them every time. Whatever they are, whatever these qualities are that you want to grow. And of course, the first time that I practiced standing in a grocery store queue with someone going so slowly in front of me, it's not going to feel that comfortable. It feels like agitation. And we have to learn to hold that feeling and really just almost soothe ourselves like we would soothe a very young child. Like I would soothe my nephew. He's 5 and he's very upset and impatient about something. And I get to just be like, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's just going to be like 5 minutes or something. So what can we do for 5 minutes? What would be more fun than just standing here being annoyed for 5 minutes? Like, what would you rather do? Do you want to listen to a song? Do you want to, I don't know, think about what we could cook for dinner? Do you want to send a voice note to somebody that you care about? What would you like to do? What would be far more interesting for these 5 minutes than just being annoyed at the person in front of you? And then slowly, 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 just by holding this discomfort and practicing, holding the discomfort and practicing, then we level up. And it doesn't take that long to start leveling up. It doesn't take that long for the seed to break above the soil, and we get to watch it grow then. We're not just trusting that it's growing beneath the surface. We get to see it. We get to interact with it. We get to nurture it and love it and see that it's got enough sunlight, see that it's got enough water, and see how it's interacting with its environment. I get to see my tiny little plant of patience, and I get to grow it, and I get to say like, oh, how could I make you even more luscious? How could I make you even stronger? What could I give you that would nurture you even more? And then maybe it gets to the point where you're in the supermarket checkout, and then you're waiting for the person in front of you, and then you notice that the person behind you only has 2 items. This happened to me the other day. The person in front of me was taking forever. They had like 1,000 grocery things that needed to be weighed on the scales, and the person that was doing the thing, in India, nothing is ever done quickly. India is the most tremendous test of my patience. So everything is very slow, and I really it's a beautiful opportunity for me to practice patience, and I learn to expect these situations now. And then I don't remember what I was doing. I was going to meet a friend or something like this. I wasn't in a rush, because I'm trying as a rule to not be in a rush in my life. But I also had things to do. And then I noticed there was like a really old lady behind me, and she only had 2 items. She had like a bunch of bananas and a thing of Greek yogurt or something. And I was like, this is a beautiful opportunity to like nurture my little patience seedling. So I was like, you can go ahead of me if you want. You've only got 2 things. I've got a whole basket. And she was so thankful. She was obviously happy about that. And it felt so good, you know. I was like, yes, this is it. This is not me getting patience falling out of the sky into my lap. This is me getting myself into a situation where, of course, it would be so easy to be impatient. It would be so easy to just stand there like, oh my God, how's this woman in front of me got 400 mangoes in her trolley, plus like at least one of every other single vegetable that needs to be weighed individually, and like, why did you have to come at this moment, and blah, blah, blah. But instead, I got to do something different. I got to train a new pathway in my brain. I got to practice going down a different slide instead. I got to create a new pattern. I got to practice a new pattern. And so that's the thing. We don't get to have the quality because we want the quality. We get to have the quality, and then we get to have a lot of different experience. Life is always giving us what we ask for, right? So if we ask for patience, life will be like, oh, perfect. Let me give her so many opportunities to practice patience. She's going to be so grateful for this. She's going to love this. She's going to be so patient if she is patient in all of these. She doesn't want to be so angry. She wants to be much more calm. Let me give her every single situation that normally makes her angry so that she can practice. And she's going to learn to be so, so calm. She's going to be so happy when she's so calm. Do you know what I mean? So it's such a fun thing to think of. And it's always fun. Like, it's always fun when we think of it in terms of qualities for the year. I'm very, very considered about what qualities I choose for my year. And I'm always like, when I ask people this, like when it's coming around to the time of like the new year, I always ask people what their intended word is for the following year, or what their intention is for the following year. And a lot of people will always say growth. And I'm always like, ooh, I love that. But also, I hope you're ready for it. Because if you ask for it, it's coming. And growth is always uncomfortable. Everything is always uncomfortable that's good for us, right? Because we need to learn. We need to learn to overcome these like very, very, very base, very dull, lifeless qualities like impatience and stagnancy and anger, frustration, boredom, insecurity, anxiety, all of these things. We get to up level. But it's never going to be just because we asked for it that it's going to fall into our lap. So then how do we become more creative with this, right? How do we make it playful? How do we make it fun? And we just get to make it fun by identifying things ahead of time and making it a challenge, making it something fun, finding a way that we could somehow make it so rewarding to be growing this plant, far more rewarding to grow the plant than it is to just abandon it altogether. And of course, it's going to cost you energy. It's going to cost you effort. So maybe you can make your own reward system of things. Like maybe you buy a journal, and at the end of each day, this could be the journal of patience. And at the end of every day, I reflect on every single moment throughout the day where I felt even an inkling of impatience. You know, even with myself, I often have a lot of feelings of impatience for myself. I'm always impatient in the morning because I want my morning coffee at the cafe. And I have a lot of things to do before I have my morning coffee in the cafe. I have to meditate, I have to do my morning practice, I want to do some writing, I have client voice notes to respond to, I have podcasts to post on, I have captions to write, I have social media things to do, I have a lot of different things to do. And it's such a challenge for me in the morning to not do those things impatiently, to give them the presence that they deserve and not be rushing through them to get to my morning coffee. So it could even be little things like that, tiny little, like very sneaky things. Up to like, you know, like you said you're going to meet your friend at the restaurant and they're running 5 minutes late and you're impatient. That's also another one of my things. Or it could be anything. It could be just that the barista takes a really long time to make your coffee and you have to wait for ages to get your coffee. So you could write down all of the things that you had and like see it, just reflect on how you reacted. How impatient was I out of 10? How long did it take me to catch it? What was my exercise impatience? How did I find a way to enjoy it? Do you know what I mean? Maybe my coffee took half an hour to come. So what did I do in that half an hour instead? Did I read some pages of a book? And then maybe you get to reward yourself, you know? Like maybe if you, at the end of the week, you get to reflect on all of those things and there's like a special occasion thing that you get to do to reward yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe you buy yourself a big bunch of flowers because you practice patience 30 times that week and you're going to be 30 times more patient of a person next week because you've practiced it. We love to get rewards. It's so nice to give ourselves rewards for these kind of things. So I don't know if that's as earth-shattering for you as it was for me, this realization. But it somehow was just a big permission slip in a lot of ways of like, oh, I don't get to wish to be patient and then suddenly become a perfect patient person. I get to wish to be patient and then I get to be a very imperfect, very impatient person that gets to practice patience. And I will be, of course, there will be like a lot of moments where I'm unsuccessful in it, you know, where I go down the slippery slide of impatience. But we get better. We always get better when we practice. It always doesn't necessarily feel like it in one moment. From today to tomorrow practicing the piano, I'm not that close, not much closer at all to playing Tchaikovsky. But when we zoom out, and if we're always on an upward trajectory, we're getting closer. Yeah, always getting closer. And it never takes that long. Actually, never takes that long. So, have a moment to reflect on what your word for the year was, if you had one. Because have a look and see how it's playing out in your life. I guarantee you that it is. And then also just think about the qualities that you would like to have in your own life. For me, it's the big one is always patience. The big one for you might be something completely different. I was having a chat with my brother in the cafe this morning. He was saying about having more confidence. And it could be anything. It could be 100 different things. And we get to reflect. I was like, how do you think that's going to show up in your life? We were talking about this podcast episode, and I was like, how do you think that's going to show up in your life now that we've unpacked this thing? And he was like, yeah, true. And we got to identify lots of different scenarios that could play out where there would be moments to exert confidence, moments to feel unconfident and practice it, moments to feel very doubtful of yourself but get to practice it. And what would the very low stakes scenarios of that look like? And what would the higher stakes scenarios of that look like? Because we get better at the big ones by doing lots of the small ones. You know what I mean? You just have to be able to catch them. So have a think about that. Let me know what your qualities are, if you can think of any. And see if you can reverse engineer the process. See if you can know where we know ourselves well. See if you can know all of the moments where you're going to be impatient, all of the moments where you're going to be angry, where you're going to be irate, where you're going to be, irritated, where you're going to be just whatever any of the negative qualities are. And see if you can identify them. Then when you're in them, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is it. This is exactly that moment. Then it will be easier to practice. And the more we practice, the more we tend to our beautiful little plants, the more beautiful and luscious of a garden that we get to have of our own inner being, our own qualities. And life gets very, very beautiful when that happens. Extraordinarily beautiful. Life wants us to be a beautiful garden. We always get the things that we ask for, but not always in the way that we think we're going to. Love you!